And we are back. We are back to the second part of this week's episode of Student of the Gun Radio. I am your host, Paul Markle, in case you forgot about that. And, of course, as always, with me in the studio is Jared. He is the boy wonder, and he's working the board on the other side, making sure that everything turns out just the way it should be. And so if there's also any digital or audio mistakes, it's Jared's fault and not mine, just so you guys know that. Now, you saw the title of this, and it seems that some people in the United States of America that are supposedly on our side, and when I say our side, I mean people that are not Obama Kool-Aid drinkers and slaves to the nation. For whatever reason, they still think that because someone is given the title Secretary of State, that automatically makes them some type of a patriot or an honorable person. And I'm sorry, I just don't see it that way. But this is something that we talked about way back in April. We did a homeroom video about it. And it was the UN Arms Trade Treaty, or the International Arms Control Trade Treaty, or whatever you want to call it. And essentially, what it has done, John Kerry, as the representative of the United States of America, put his name on this thing on our behalf. That's right, on your behalf. The Secretary of State signed the Arms Trade Agreement. Now you're like, well, International Arms Trade Agreement, well, what does that have to do with me as an individual citizen? I don't have battleships and intercontinental ballistic missiles. I don't deal in, main battle tanks or howitzers, so who cares? Doesn't matter to me. Well, what UN arms trade used to be all about back in the olden days was things like ICBMs, ballistic missiles and bombers and tanks, and all the nations of the world got together, and it's laughable, ladies and gentlemen. It's laughable that these little third world despots think that they can go to some world body and say, oh, well, we've decided that you're only allowed to have so many main battle tanks, or you're only allowed to have so many battleships, or you're only allowed. Allowed by whom? Oh, well, we all agreed. Well, who are you, and why do you get to say what we have? Why should Russia or China or Japan or England or, Djibouti or Somalia or Trinidad and Tobago tell the United States of America how many aircraft carriers we're allowed to have, or how many main battle tanks we're allowed to possess? How about this? How about if you don't like how many battle tanks we have, you build 10,000 of your own, and, we'll play chess. Who are these people? Why is Trinidad and Tobago and Djibouti, and look it up, it's a real country, and Argentina telling the United States how many thises or that's we can have? Well, it's no longer about warplanes and howitzers and tanks. The current treaty, as it was written and as it was presented back in April, deals with every type of military hardware, including, up to and including, small arms and ammunition and gun parts. As we read it, as it was originally presented, you're like, well, still, I don't understand, Paul. I can't own, an M16 assault rifle, made for the United States. Oh, okay, I got you. How about ammunition? How many of you guys out there really like to purchase that less expensive steel-cased ammo that comes from Russia or the former Eastern Bloc? How many of you guys like that? Do you folks understand, those of you who picked up some really good firearms deals over the previous 10 to 15 years, and maybe you went into your local gun shop and you bought an SKS back in the 90s for literally like $99. You bought an SKS for $99. And actually, what's funny is some of the guns were so inexpensive that people overlooked them, because they're like, it can't even be worth anything if it's only $99. But the $99 SKSs, well, why were we able to buy SKS rifles, hardwood stocks and steel barrels and all that. How are we able to buy those for $99? Because certainly you couldn't manufacture a gun of that quality or caliber in the United States of America for $99. There's no way. If you manufactured that rifle in the United States, it would cost you, what, $400, $500, $600? Well, why were they so cheap? Well, even back in the 90s, when Clinton was in office, the dollar overseas was still very strong and very respected. And so what American importers could do is they could go over to Romania, the former Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic, Yugoslavia, whatever. They could go there with American dollars and get these guns for great deals and still turn a profit, import them and still turn a profit. Well, what we've got now is, according to this agreement, the UN has decided that it has the right to decide or to oversee any arms shipment from one nation to another. And you're like, well, still, Paul, I don't get you. I don't care. All right. How many of you guys like getting your hands on surplus rifles, pistols, ammunition, parts, and so forth? If you're a gun guy or a gun girl, you probably do. You've probably been at a gun show or online or picked up a catalog and you're like, wow, that's a great deal. I'm going to get that. Well, why is it a great deal? Well, it's a great deal because, they found a warehouse full of these in the Czech Republic. Well, according to this deal, what the UN can do now by their own authority is they can tell the Czech Republic that they are not allowed to sell those to you, or that you're not allowed to import them. Or, well, when it comes down to it, who in the world told these freaking third world dictators and despots that we needed to get their permission to do anything? As an American citizen, a citizen whose grandfather came here in 1776, okay, great-great-great-grandfather, came here in 1776 to get away from the oppressive British crown. My family, my mom's side of the family, was originally from Scotland. You may know this. And they left Scotland because of British oppression, because of the oppression of the British crown. And they went across the water to Ireland. And then the British oppression followed them to Ireland. And so great-great-grandpa came to the United States. And he landed in Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia, and joined George Washington's army. He joined the Continental Army. He was a part of the Pennsylvania Riflemen of the Pennsylvania Line. And at that point in time, they stopped running. They stopped moving. They're like, nope. We left the British, we left Scotland because of the oppression. We left Ireland because of the oppression. Now we're in the United States and the oppression is here. We're not leaving. We're kicking them out. And that's what great-grandpa and thousands of other American patriots did. Well, here we are again. Here we are 200 plus years later, and we have some foreign power wanting to tell us what we can and can't do. And to add insult to injury, the people that are supposed to have our back, that are supposed to be defending us and our interest, are all about it. They think it's a great idea. Your, Comrade Barry, the artist formerly known as Barry Soetoro, thinks it's a great idea. As a matter of fact, the artist formerly known as Barry Soetoro put his signature on an executive order forbidding the reimportation of the Garand rifle into the United States. Even though you can own them legally here, we can't bring them back here for you to buy them.
Well, we've got to get those military-style weapons off the streets.
Yeah, the American citizen can't be trusted with military-grade hardware from 1936. You can't be trusted with that military-grade hardware. So, for those of you who are still playing the naive game and still think that just because someone, it gets the title Secretary of State that they're somehow a patriot, you don't fool yourself. Now, the follow-up question on this is, and everyone's like, well, stop, Paul, you're getting all excited, but in order for the United States to comply with this treaty by law, it has to go to the Senate. And this is back to that whole pesky Constitution thing that Barry would get rid of if he could, or he's slowly destroying it and just ignoring it when he doesn't want to. But the Senate has to ratify the treaty. Any international treaty like that has to be ratified by the Senate. And what they've said is they did a poll, and the majority of the Senate, not all, but the majority, is against this treaty. So they're like, oh, it's dead on arrival. This is nothing but, this is just, they said, oh, it's just for show or what have you. Well, okay, let's be intelligent citizens for a while, and let's ask ourselves, why do politicians propose and vote on bills that they know when they do it, they know it's going to fail, or they know it's going to be vetoed, or they know it's not going to be passed? You say they're not stupid. They know that. Going into it, let's just say that this comes to the Senate and the Senate votes no. And you'll say, well, see, Kerry knew that. Well, why would you vote for something, or why would you approve something that you know is doomed to failure? Why would you do that? Well, number one, when you do something like that, let's say in California, all right, California is dealing with a situation right now where it has been proposed that all lead-based ammunition be made illegal, unlawful. You can't have it, own it, shoot it in the state of California. And what the California, pro-gun California people are saying is, oh, this doesn't have a prayer. It'll never be signed. It's not going to pass. It's not going to happen. Okay. I hope that's correct. I hope it doesn't. But you say, if in fact that is true, why do the politicians, if they know it's going to fail, why do they put it forward anyway? Well, they do it because they are attempting to legitimize the argument. They're attempting to legitimize the point. When you force someone to vote against a bill, what you're essentially doing is you're establishing that that bill is somehow relevant, or that that bill somehow has merit or credence. And again, public school, Google it. But what you're doing is you're trying to establish a norm. You're trying to make the argument, and even if the argument fails, think about it. How many gun control laws were proposed 20 years ago, were defeated, and 10 years, 15 years, 20 years later are now law, whereas when it was originally proposed, it was defeated? Well, if when these things are defeated, or when they're voted against, they're not dead. What they've done is they've established their merit. They've said, well, it's worthy of our consideration. And just like this UN arms control thing, even if the Senate votes against it, and it doesn't become an official treaty that, we are a signatory to, we don't recognize the bill. What Kerry has done by signing his name on it is he has essentially established the fact that, yes, indeed, the United Nations does have the authority to dictate certain things to its member nations. What he's saying is that they've got a point there, and we need to consider this point. And if you think that the Senate saying goodbye, or, not voting for it, voting against it, or failing to ratify this treaty, if you think that's the end of it, you're a fool. We were told back in April. Remember back in April, this had only been 6 months ago, not even 6 months. This was originally brought up, and it was originally voted on. It was approved to move forward. And they're like, oh, no, it's not going to happen. We're not going to vote for it. Hillary's not going to vote for it. Well, guess what? Billary is no longer the Secretary of State. So she didn't have to, she, whatever it is, didn't have to put its name on it because it wants to be the president. Kerry's done. Once you've run, here's how it works. Once you've run for president, and I don't mean gone for the nomination. There's lots of people that go for the nomination, then don't get it, and then they get it the next time, and they become president. Once you've run a national presidential campaign and lost, historically, you're done. You don't get another shot. You're the guy who lost. Kerry is the guy who lost the presidential campaign. He had his shot. He's not going to get another one. So putting his name on this bill doesn't hurt his political future. We know the lunatics up in Massachusetts that keep electing him are just going to keep doing it. I'm sorry, Massachusetts, but what is wrong with you people up there? Ted Kennedy, Barney Frank, John Kerry, holy cow. Is there something in the water? What is wrong with you people? Why do you keep foisting these lunatics upon the United States? Stop it, please. Jeez, I'm sorry to go off on a tangent there, but what is wrong with you people up there? Oh, Ted Kennedy was oh, stop yourself. Crazy people. But that is why, if you ever asked yourself, you're like, I don't understand. Or, well, it's no big deal that that the Colorado Senate, that they passed this, they sent it to the House because the House isn't going to approve it. No, what they did was they just established the argument as somehow being legitimate. They made the point that, yeah, there is some credence to this disarming the people thing, and we needed to address that. So they're establishing a norm. It's very subtle, it's very deceptive, but it's also very deliberate and very purposeful. And you need to pay attention to what's going on around you to quit being tricked by this stuff. Oh, my Lord. Jared, you want to talk about toy guns?
Yeah, let's talk about toy guns.
Oh, sweet.
Speaking of toy guns, sorry, my ADD. The little Tommy gun air rifle that Zach was shooting. Check out that video on our YouTube channel. It's pretty cool.
The auto air ordnance.
That's it.
Air ordnance. It's a full auto pellet gun. It's operated by a compressed gas cylinder, and it has a 100 round belt that shoots pellets. And we had one to T&E a couple of years ago for an article, and we put that little test video up. Now, of course, if you live in New Jersey, that would be probably, I'm absolutely sure that would be illegal.
Yeah, along with slingshots.
Slingshots, yeah. So, yeah. Well, all right, getting on to toy guns. This next story, if you're a fan of Glenn Beck, if you're a fan of talk radio, you probably heard about this because, and this story comes to us from theblaze.com, but a Virginia Beach, Virginia student, 7th grader, has been expelled. Now, remember, back from your high school days there, guys, if you're suspended, that means you're kicked out of school for a week or 3 days or whatever. That's a suspension. Now, an expulsion means you're kicked out of school forever, for the duration of the school year. Now, the 7th grader was kicked out. He was expelled from school, and you're like, oh, they must have caught him with dope. Maybe he's like Trayvon, and they caught him with like dope and stolen, goods and what have you. Oh, no. Here's what this little boy did, what this 7th grader did. He was caught red-handed shooting an airsoft gun in his front yard. And you're like, what? You guys, all right, how many you guys go to Academy Outdoors, you go to Walmart, you go to your favorite, outdoor sporting goods store, and what do they have? Airsoft guns, right? Little plastic BB guns. It's spring operated. It shoots a 6mm plastic BB, and the spring operated ones are pretty mild. You shoot them, they go click, the little thing comes out, and it hits you. Now, for those of you who are old enough to remember, how many of you guys out there in the audience remember the yellow plastic BB guns back in the 70s? If you're old enough to remember that, they shot those little soft rubber yellow BBs and little handguns and little rifles, and usually they would come out of the gun and go 10 feet. They weren't very powerful at all, and you had those little yellow BBs that went everywhere. But airsoft guns are the modern equivalent of that. And they're green and blue and pink and yellow and orange and all that jazz. And they shoot, the spring-loaded ones shoot an innocuous little 6mm plastic pellet. Okay. Boys will be boys, and American boys like to play with BB guns and pellet guns, and that's natural, and there's nothing wrong with it. And if you think there is something wrong with it, we need to talk. Well, actually, we don't need to talk because you're too stupid to listen to me if you are afraid of a BB or a pellet gun. But the bus driver saw this happen.
You'll shoot your eye out.
You'll shoot. Oh, yeah, you might shoot your eye out. The bus driver saw this happen. It was reported. And the school has suspended this boy. I believe they suspended him and his friend because they were shooting the pellet guns at each other. Now, and you say, well, the kid took it to school. I can see, I can see. No, he didn't take it to school. His crime was being in his own front yard waiting for the bus to show up. And the bus driver saw it, and they reported it. And so this kid has been expelled from school for something that he did in his front yard. Now, ask yourself this, ladies and gentlemen and children of all ages. Are you allowed to do lawful activities in your own front yard? Or do you have to seek permission from the state to conduct lawful activities in your own front yard? The parents bought the things for the kids. They knew what it was all about. And the spring-operated airsoft guns are relatively harmless, folks. Okay, they're not going to hurt anybody. But so what do you think? Do you think that the state overreacted here? And if you have your kids, and I believe it was a public school. Let me see. We'll look down through the story here. Jared, check and see if that was a public school for me. Jared's reading the show notes right now. But we've said this before. I'm going to go ahead and say it again. If you have your kids in a public school system and the public school system attempts to indoctrinate, to terrorize, to mistreat your children, don't act surprised, because there is a pattern of behavior in the United States of America today. Because whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, the fact of the matter is the vast majority of the people that are populating these school systems are liberals. They are Obama supporters. They are people who think they know how to raise your children better than you. If you have a wife or a husband who is a public school teacher, don't write me and say what of a good person they are and how they would never do that. I got that. But what I also know, based upon the evidence, based upon the pattern of behavior, how many times do we have to open up the Google News, Yahoo News, whatever news, and read yet another story about another public school principal, teacher, what have you, terrorizing students? And when you say, terrorizing, well, let me see. When you take a six-year-old child and you pull them into the principal's office for 2 hours and interrogate them over a cap gun and make the kid pee their pants because you won't let them go to the bathroom, yeah, I'm going to call that terrorizing a child. And yes, that absolutely, in fact, did happen. It's happening all over the United States. When you call the police, when you call the sheriff's department to have a kid pulled out of school for wearing a T-shirt, a Marine Corps T-shirt, because it has a picture of crossed rifles on it, you call the police because the kid has a picture of a gun on his shirt, you're a freaking lunatic and you are a psychological terrorist and you have no business being around our children. But these people are out there. And they are terrorizing your children, and they're trying to indoctrinate your children to believing that guns are de facto bad and should be only allowed in the hands of the state, and only the state can have them.
The only name that I have seen, it looks like it's Virginia Beach City Public Schools, because they had a Facebook retaliation post, apparently. And I had to go to wavy.com, which is the local news agency. I guess it's WAVY is probably a channel.
Yeah, you can look this up on the Blaze. It's in the title of the story is student suspended or student may be expelled for the rest of the year for playing with a gun in his own yard. in his own yard. Do you believe that the state has the authority to come into your home or onto your property and dictate what your kids can and can't do?
I'll put that link up on studentofthegunradio.com. If you just click on our little part 2 of episode Z031, and it'll be there for you.
So answer that question for yourselves. Do you believe that the state, and you say, well, what do you mean the state, Paul? Well, public school employees are the state. Do you believe that the state has the authority to dictate what your children can and cannot do on your property? And if you do, hey, fantastic. Welcome to the New World Order, and I hope you're a comfortable slave. But if you allow this to stand, folks, and if you're up there in Virginia listening to me, you know, Virginia is one of those states where it's a commonwealth, I know. Virginia is a commonwealth that could go either way. You have that area that's up around D.C. that is pretty much gone. It's lost. And then you have the area down toward, south of West Virginia, over towards Kentucky and North Carolina that seems to be still pretty stable. But Virginia, you better figure it out. You better get strong, and you better decide whether or not you're going to allow these public school thugs to terrorize your children, because they're not going to stop until someone stops them. That's pretty much it. If you think they're just going to decide on their own to stop terrorizing your children, you're wrong. It's not going to happen. Now, this next story, this is it's not really gun related, but it's kind of a follow-up to a previous story. Now, you remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the National Park Service employee, the National Park Service park ranger or whatever, who decided that it would be a good idea to issue a citation to a preschool teacher for the crime of taking her children, her little, 3, 4, 5-year-old children, to a national park on a picnic and failing to get a license or a permit to do so. Because we know that we need to get permission from the government now to go out and to, look at the sun and look at the mountains and the streams and the trees, because apparently that now belongs to the king and we need the king's permission. So in addition to the Park Service being populated by Nazis who think it's a great idea to go ahead and ticket a preschool teacher for failing to get a permit to take her kids on a picnic. Yes, that did indeed happen. And yes, it took a United States senator to quash the ticket. Yeah. Okay. Well, now your National Park Service, now remember, where does the National Park Service get its money, Jared?
From a magical island?
No, the National Park Service gets its money not just from the budget. Now you're like, well, they get it from the annual budget. They get all their money from the federal government, who gets their money from us. Okay, the park services get a tremendous amount of their money from the excise tax that is levied on gun owners and hunters. You guys should know, if you don't know this, well, welcome to the party. But every single box of ammunition you purchase, every gun you buy, every firearms accessory has an excise tax on it. It has a tax on it that you don't ever see. This tax is built into the cost of the gun, built into the cost of the ammo. The manufacturers build it into the cost because, hey, let's face it, the only people that pay taxes in the United States of America are the citizens. When you say, oh, the corporate people pay the taxes, where do you think the corporate people get the money from? I don't need to give you a lesson in economics right now, but here's the deal. A tremendous amount of money is generated. Millions upon millions and millions of dollars are generated every single year by you. If you're a gun owner, you go out to the range and shoot. You buy 100 rounds of 9mm, 223, 308, whatever. The government gets a piece of that in excise tax. You buy a new gun, they get a piece of that. And what do they do with that money? Well, it's supposed to go for wildlife preservation and so forth. So a lot of your National Park Service's money comes from you. So I keeping in mind the fact that a lot of the money in the National Park Services that they use to operate comes from you, the American gun owner, I thought you'd like to know what they're doing with their time, effort, and money. Well, it seems that the National Park Service decided it would be a great idea to produce a video that praises Islam. Yeah, that's right, folks. A video that praises Islam. And they took their cameras and they went around and they interviewed a bunch of young Muslim children, little Muslim girls and little Muslim boys. And they had them explain to the camera how tough it was to be a Muslim in America and how people just didn't understand. That's right. Now, whether or not you think it's a good idea to do this, maybe you're one of those, one of those sheep or one of those slaves that think it's a good idea to make Muslim propaganda videos. Because we just, and I've got to think that Joseph Goebbels is in whatever level of hell Joseph Goebbels currently inhabits. I've got to think that he's down there just laughing maniacally at the National Park Service's propaganda film praising Islam. So, all right, I'll play the devil's advocate. And let's just say that you think, hey, that's a good idea. We need to do videos praising Islam and explaining how they're so misunderstood and they're so maligned and there's so much prejudice against, Muslims in America that we just need to do an informational video to address that because it's a problem in America. And as Americans, we like to address these kind of things. Do you believe that that the National Park Service, that it's in their charter to produce these videos? How is it in the National Park Service charter to produce explanation videos to make you like Islam? I've got a question. Hey, Jared, do you think that the National Park Service should do a propaganda video explaining all the prejudice that homeschool children encounter?
I think they should. If they're going to do the Muslim propaganda video, why not do the flip side?
Do you think that that the ACLU would sit still if the National Park Services did a film explaining how wonderful homeschool children are and how they're misunderstood and they're maligned and that they're really not bad people? Do you think? Or, how about the Mormons? Do you think the National Park Services should do a video explaining to America the joys of Mormonism and how it really is normal and how you should appreciate it? Do you think that's in the Park Service's charter? I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure it's not. But here we go again. We live in that upside-down world. We live in the United States of America where the government is not operating on a what are we allowed to do program. Oh, no. No, the federal government is operating on the we do what we want until someone stops us program. We will do what we want when we want to do it until someone has the guts to stop us. And until then, too bad, America, suck it. So we thought that that you would appreciate knowing that your National Park Services, which is using a tremendous amount of money, that was produced by shooters and hunters and outdoorsmen and sportsmen, just like you. So, hey, congratulations there. Now, this next story comes to us from the People's Republic of California, where we're still waiting to find out the final ruling from His Majesty Governor Jerry Brown there, Peace, Love, Dope. And the bills, have we gotten an update on that yet, Jared? I don't think we have. All those anti-gun bills that were sent to Jerry Brown's desk, apparently they're still languishing. And if you're a California person, if you're deep into the California legislative process, we'd like to know if Governor Brown just ignores these laws and doesn't either sign and or veto them, do they de facto just become law after a certain point? So we need to know that. We need to know what Jerry Brown is doing up there. He said he's been on board with gun control for a long, long time. He never met a gun control bill that he didn't like, but for whatever reason, he didn't jump all over these. So just kind of left, you California comfortable slaves out there, just kind of left hanging in the breeze to see what your fate happens to be. Well, this one came to us from California, and we just had to put it in the show notes this week. Again, I apologize. It's not a gun thing. It's more of a freedom thing. It's more of a thing where you have to ask yourself, are parents in charge, or are we going to go ahead and put the state in charge of everything? And it has to do with the mercy rule. Now, if you guys, most of you out there, well, maybe not in the last 10 years or so, but most of you older guys probably participated in Little League baseball, Little League sports when you were a kid. I know I did. And you had this thing, when you were 8, 9 years old and you were playing Little League, you had this thing called the mercy rule. And once the game became so lopsided, for instance, whether it was 25 points or 30 points or 15 or whatever it happened to be, the arbitrary number of points, if it came to a mercy situation, then the game was just over. And it looks like the California is so concerned, and this comes to us from Fox News again. It says the California Youth Football League is throwing a flag at the new enforcement rules. It's been proposed that any coach that allows his players to score over 35 points more than their opponents can be suspended and fined up to $200. You heard that right. The state is going to step in and suspend and or fine the coach $200 if they allow their players to score more than 35 points or 35 points more than the opponents. And you're like, what? First of all, you may be a fan of the mercy rule, and I think mercy rules are fine. But the rules are put in by the leagues. The rules are agreed upon by the coaches. Now, I played Little League baseball. I played, junior league basketball, all that good stuff. And was there ever a situation where a mercy rule was applied? They even had it in high school, when I was in high school. Was there ever a situation where it was applied? Yes. Who applied it? Now, this is the big, think about this, guys. For all of you who think, well, that is an excellent rule, and we cannot allow children's self-esteem to be destroyed by having another team score more than 35 points. Okay, whatever. Who's supposed to be the one who is in charge of the game? Let's go back to athletics. Let's go back to basics. All right, who arbitrates the baseball game? The guy with the mask that stands behind home plate? Yeah, the umpire. Okay. Who arbitrates a football game? A group of referees. You have the line judge, side judge, referees. You have a group of officials. That's why they're called officials. Because, good, bad, or indifferent, they are in charge. If an official, and we have to remember this, and this is how we have sportsmanship and fair play, is because both teams agree to abide by the ruling of the officials, right? So who is in charge of stopping the game if it gets to 35 points more? Who is in charge of enforcing the mercy rule? It's not the state. We don't need a freaking state bureaucrat to come in and enforce the freaking mercy rule. Lord in heaven, people, have you become such slaves that you everything in the whole world, every issue you ever encounter on planet Earth, you turn to the government for your solution? Oh, and I could almost guarantee you that the impetus behind this was some mommy or daddy whose kid was on the losing end of a game, and they filed a complaint or an injunction or whatever. And let me tell you, if you go to the government and say, hey, we need you to intervene, they're more than happy to jump in. Folks, come on. Come on. This is insanity. You're telling me that the referee can't add up the score? that let's say let's say the game is 32-0. All right, or let's do 7 times. Let's say it's 28-0, and or whatever, 28-0 plus 3 points, so it's 31-0. It's 31-0. The game is still going on, and Team A, who's winning, intercepts the ball and runs it in for a touchdown. All right, so 31 plus 6 is what? Well, even in California, 31 plus 6 is still 37, right? Well, it just became 37 points. So the referee says, all right, 37 points, mercy rule, game is over. But according to the state of California's youth league, you can't score more than 35 points. Well, that team has 37 points. So what? So we suspend the coach and fine him $200? Are you kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me out there in California? And you reasonable people, all you reasonable people are like, well, you got to understand that the state needs to step in. Stop yourself. I'm sick of hearing from you. Take control of your own lives. Jeez Louise. So there you go. All right. And for those of you that don't like it when Paul gets into politics, I suggest that you find another station to listen to. Have a nice day. All right. Recommended reading. And I'm not gonna let this go. I don't think we've done this as a recommended reading on Student of the Gun Radio yet, so we're going to go ahead and do it this week. It is Guns Across the Border, and it is the how and why the United States government allowed guns to pass into the hands of Mexican drug cartels, and it went on for several years. And it went on under the direct noses of the Department of Justice. And then when people found out about it, they're like, oh, we just one agent let this happen. No, it was a very well organized, it was a disorganized debacle. But what happened was hundreds, if not thousands, of rifles and shotguns and what have you were sold to Mexican drug cartel representatives that the Department of Justice and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, Explosives, Potato Chips, and Beer, they knew these were bad people. They knew that they should not be getting these guns. And they had this grand scheme plan to bust them wide open. Well, it never, ever, ever happened. And the only thing that did happen was several thousand guns ended up in the hands of drug cartels so they could kill their own people and kill our people too. Well, Mike Detty was an FFL dealer. He was a gun dealer operating in Arizona, and he knew something was hinky. He knew something was up with these guys. He went to the ATF and said, hey, these guys, there's something wrong with these guys. They should not be doing this. And they're like, oh, thank you for bringing this to our attention. And what we'd like you to do is to help us bust these guys. Well, instead of helping them bust these guys, they put Mike's life in jeopardy. They jeopardized his life, and they allowed guns to walk into Mexico. Now, the book Guns Across the Border is available at Amazon.com. It's available at Barnes & Noble, anywhere fine books are sold. If your local bookstore doesn't have it, ask them why not. Say, what's up? Why don't you have this book? You got Bill Clinton's autobiography on the shelf, but you don't have this book. That's wrong. Fix yourself. So it's by Mike Detty. That's Detty. Check it out. That is your recommended reading assignment for this week. Now, before we let you go, we've got a vagination report. That's right. And this vagination report comes to us. This is a follow-up to the Virginia City thing. What happened was, in the Virginia City airsoft gun debacle, that a mother called 911. A woman, a neighbor, Gladys Kravitz, she called 911 because these kids were out in their yards playing with these airsoft guns. And when questioned whether or not she thought that they were real guns, she said no. She knew that they were toy guns, but it still made her uncomfortable to see a boy point the gun at someone, even though she knew it wasn't real. Let that sink in for a second. So Susie Nosy Neighbor here is so afraid of an object that she admitted that she knew was not a real gun. She knew it was a toy, but it made her so uncomfortable that she had to call the police. Folks, come on. Is there any hope for this nation? Is there any hope left for the United States of America? I don't know. When I see things like this, yeah, I understand these people are out there. But when it gets to the point where we're dispatching police officers because the neighbor lady sees a toy gun and it makes her uncomfortable, so she thinks it's a good, she should call. She told the 911 dispatcher that she knew it wasn't a real gun, but it makes her uncomfortable. I'm sorry that you're afraid of a toy. And some of you folks out there, you probably think that this is okay. Well, nah, you don't. You're listening to Student of the Gun Radio. You don't think it's okay. And we were almost to the end of this episode, so if you're a liberal, left-wing lunatic, you probably haven't gotten this far. But come on, folks, it's time to gut check, and even if you're a woman, it's time to check. It's time to reach down and grow a pair, because you're afraid of a toy. What are you going to do when the monsters come? When the monsters come to a mall near you and decide that because you're an infidel, they're just going to torture you to death. Oh, I wish I had a plastic gun. America, stop it. Stop it with the vagination. Except that, it does give us stuff to talk about here on Student of the Gun Radio. Now, thank you very much again for joining us for this episode, this journey into making you aware and sometimes uncomfortable. Maybe you could point a plastic gun at you. We could point an orange and green gun at you and make you uncomfortable. But don't forget about our good friends at Keltec Weapons, Cocoa, Florida. Don't forget about them at KeltecWeapons.com. And of course, our good friends at Crossbreed Holsters up there in Republic, Missouri. Check out their wares if you want a tuckable, probably the most comfortable holster you'll ever wear. You can check them out. They are the ones that make this make it happen. And also, if you want to be the good guy of the week, the student of the gun of the week, if we read your question on air, do not forget that our good friends at XS Sights will give you the good guy package with the hat and the shirt and the bag and the stickers and all that stuff. And if you want to check out XS Sights, just go to xssightsystems.com or Google X. That's X-Ray Sam, capital X, capital S, Sights. Just Google them. Check out all the stuff they have for pistols and rifles and shotguns and what have you. They're good for fighting and they're good for hunting. Check them out.
The tactical response fighting rifle class that I just ran with the AK had XS sights on it, and they worked awesome.
Yeah, that's right. Jared had XS sights on his AK. I had XS sights on my AK, and Jared's pistol, the pistol that he used during the course, had XS sights on it as well. So, folks, we're at the end of yet another episode. I can't believe it went by so fast. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you found it inspirational. We hope you picked up something there that you can take with you as you go about your life as a free citizen. And if you're currently in a slave state, hey, come to Free America. We need some good people here. And if you're overseas, if you're one of our listeners in English-speaking overseas countries, thanks for tuning in. We're with you in spirit. Sorry that you live in an enslaved nation, but keep your head down and watch out for those Islamic terrorists.
Real quick before we go, did you see the post on our Facebook about the license plate that one of our fans saw? It said left NJ.
Yeah, we like that. That's awesome. One of our fans told us that they just saw a plate that said left NJ. So good on you. Get out of freaking slave states. Take your money and your families and move to Free America. Now remember, you're a beginner once, but you should be a student for life.